The year is 1945, and the war in Europe has reached its violent, collapsing final breaths. In southern Germany, just beyond a bomb-scarred town whose name has already begun to fade from official maps, an American-run prisoner of war camp sits behind coils of barbed wire and leaning wooden watchtowers. The guns are mostly silent now, but fear has not received the memo. Inside the camp, a group rarely discussed in history waits in tense uncertainty. German women POWs, captured as auxiliaries, factory workers, clerks and camp support staff as the Third Reich unraveled. They have not eaten properly in days. Hunger is no longer a sensation, it is a condition. Their bodies move slowly, conserving energy, their eyes hollow but alert, trained by years of war to expect deception at every turn. The air smells of wet earth, old uniforms, and smoke that never quite leaves Europe. Somewhere nearby, an American generator hums, steady and unfamiliar, like a foreign heartbeat. Then comes an order they do not understand. They are marched, not to interrogation, not to punishment, but to a long wooden mess hall. The doors open. Inside are tables, benches, metal trays, steam, real steam. To women raised on ration cards are sats bread and propaganda fed suspicion of the enemy. What waits inside feels wrong. Too much food has always meant danger. Too much generosity has always had a price. Whispers ripple through the line in broken breaths. Is this a trick? Is this poison? Is this even real food? The trays arrive not with ceremony, but with a dull, metallic finality, sliding down the length of the rough wooden table, as if this moment were no different from any other military procedure. Yet to the women seated there, that sound lands heavier than artillery. It echoes in their chests. Several flinch instinctively, shoulders tightening, backs straightening as if bracing for impact. For years, every unexpected noise has meant danger, an order barked too late, a guard's temper snapping, a bombing run beginning overhead. Now the noise comes from food, and that alone feels wrong, deeply wrong, as if reality itself has slipped out of alignment. What rests on the trays does not match the world they have lived in. The bread is pale and thick, its surface uncracked, its edges clean, not darkened or crumbly like the ration loaves they have known. Those grey, bitter bricks stretched with potato peelings and sawdust, sliced thin to make them last. This bread looks soft. It yields slightly under its own weight. Steam rises from it faintly, carrying a smell that strikes the senses like a memory-long buried yeast. Warmth, something almost sweet. The women inhale before they realize they are doing it, and the smell alone makes several of them dizzy. Beside the bread are mashed potatoes, smooth and pale, with small pools of melted butter glistening on the surface. Butter, a word that feels foreign now, almost obscene. Fat was something spoken of in the past tense, in stories from before the war, from childhood kitchens that no longer exist. And there, anchoring the tray like proof of some impossible claim, is meat. Not a scrap, not a bone. A real portion, browned and solid, its surface shining faintly with grease. For a moment, some of the women wonder if it is fake, an imitation made from something else, something cheaper, something dangerous. Years of ersatz food have trained them not to trust appearances. No one reaches for anything. Hands rest in laps or hover just above the table, fingers curled inward, knuckles pale. Hunger gnaws at them with a ferocity that borders on pain, but fear holds them still. Hunger, they have learned, can be endured. Fear is less forgiving. Eyes flick from tray to tray, then to the American guards stationed along the walls. The guards do not speak. They do not rush them. Rifles hang loosely from their shoulders, not raised, not threatening, but ever present. The women search their faces for signs, mockery, impatience, cruelty, but find none. The expressions they see are flat, tired, almost indifferent. That unsettles them more than anger would have. A whisper moves down the table, barely audible, shaped by dry lips and shallow breaths. Is it safe? Another whisper follows, sharper, edged with panic. Eat too fast and you can die. They have heard the stories, even among themselves. Bodies starved too long, rejecting sudden nourishment. Stomachs collapsing, hearts failing. The war has taught them that survival often comes with cruel, arbitrary rules. There is no manual for mercy. One woman finally moves. She is older than most, her hair pulled back tightly, her face lined beyond her years. Slowly, deliberately, she reaches out and touches the bread with 2 fingers, as if testing the temperature of water before stepping in. The bread depresses slightly beneath her touch, then springs back. Her breath catches. She pulls her hand away, staring at her fingers as though expecting them to be burned or stained. They are not. They are clean. That small motion breaks something fragile in the room. Another woman tears off a corner of bread, not with confidence, but with care, as if the loaf might punish her for being too rough. The sound of tearing bread, a soft, fibrous rip, feels impossibly loud. Several heads turn. No alarm sounds. No guard intervenes. The woman lifts the piece to her mouth, hesitates for one last heartbeat, then bites down. Her eyes close instantly. Not in pleasure exactly, but in shock. Her jaw works slowly, methodically. Chewing has become a conscious act over the years, something to be managed, rationed. The taste hits her not as flavor but as sensation, softness, warmth, salt. Her throat tightens and she swallows with effort. For a moment, she does nothing else. Then she takes another bite, smaller this time, more cautious. Around her, the others begin to follow, each at their own pace. Some tear bread into tiny pieces, lining them up on the tray as if imposing order might make the situation safer. Others cut the meat into impossibly small portions, spreading the act of eating across time, afraid of what will happen when it is gone. A few cannot help themselves. Their hands shake as they shovel food toward their mouths faster than they intended, eyes darting up in guilty reflex, expecting to be stopped. No one stops them. The smell in the room deepens as plates are disturbed. Hot starch, rendered fat, the faint bitterness of coffee or gravy depending on the tray. It is overwhelming. It awakens not just hunger, but grief. Memories surface uninvited. Family tables, Sunday meals, laughter that once felt permanent. Several women choke not on food, but on emotion, turning their faces away so their tears fall unnoticed onto their sleeves. The silence is broken only by eating. No conversation rises above a whisper. Cutlery scrapes against metal trays with a nervous, irregular rhythm. Somewhere down the table, a woman sobs quietly as she chews, shoulders shaking, trying desperately not to draw attention. She does not know why she is crying. Relief, shame, fear, gratitude. Everything has collapsed into one unbearable moment. The American guards remain where they are. One shifts his weight. Another glances toward the door. None interfere. Their presence feels strangely distant, as if this moment does not belong to them. And perhaps it doesn't. Perhaps it belongs solely to the women at the table, suspended between what they have endured and what they cannot yet believe is possible. For the first time in years, the enemy has given them something without demanding anything in return. And that, more than hunger or fear, is what makes their hands tremble as time stretches in unfamiliar ways once the first shock passes. Minutes that should feel fleeting instead hang heavy in the air, each second measured by cautious bites and uncertain glances. The women begin to realize, slowly and unevenly, that nothing terrible is happening. No whistles shriek, no boots pound toward the tables, no shouted orders slice through the room. The food remains where it is, warm, solid, obediently ordinary. This realization does not bring instant comfort. It brings confusion, and confusion is dangerous territory for people conditioned by years of strict rules and brutal consequences. Some women stop eating altogether, forks frozen halfway between tray and mouth, as if waiting for the punishment that must surely follow. Their stomachs knot with suspicion rather than hunger. They scan the room again, counting guards, memorizing exits, rehearsing explanations in their minds for crimes they have not yet committed. Others continue eating, but with eyes lowered, backs hunched, trying to make themselves invisible, as though visibility itself might provoke retribution. Survival has taught them that attention is rarely neutral. A younger woman slips a piece of bread into the pocket of her threadbare uniform, fingers moving quickly, instinctively. She does not look proud of herself. She looks terrified. Hoarding is not greed, it is reflex. Food disappears without warning in war. Kindness evaporates. Tomorrow may bring nothing but watery soup, or nothing at all. Around her, others do the same. Potatoes wrapped in cloth, meat concealed beneath scraps of paper, chocolate hidden like contraband. The irony is not lost on them. For years, they were warned that Americans were thieves, hoarders, moral degenerates. Now they are the ones stealing food in silence, not out of malice, but out of habit born from scarcity. A few women eat too quickly despite their fear, driven by a hunger that overrides reason. Their cheeks hollow and fill with each hurried bite. One begins to cough, panic flashing across her face as she struggles to swallow. Nearby, another woman grips her arm, steadying her, whispering urgently to slow down, to breathe. The coughing subsides, leaving behind a tremor that does not fully fade. Death has been arbitrary for too long. No one wants to tempt it now. Then there are those who cannot finish. They push their trays away, hands pressed flat against the table as nausea rolls through them. Starvation has changed their bodies, and their bodies do not forget easily. Guilt rises alongside discomfort, guilt for wasting food, guilt for being unable to accept it, guilt for surviving when so many others have not. One woman stares at the untouched meat on her tray as if it were an accusation. An American medic moves through the space quietly, his presence barely announced. He carries no weapon, only a small bag slung over his shoulder. He does not bark orders. He crouches beside a woman who has gone pale, speaks softly in broken German, supplemented by gestures. Slow down, small bites, it's all right. His voice lacks urgency. It lacks threat. This, more than the words themselves, unsettles the women. They are accustomed to commands delivered at volume, authority reinforced by force. Calm concern feels alien, almost theatrical, as if it must be hiding something sharper beneath the surface. Some of the women recoil slightly as the medic approaches, flinching from proximity, from the idea of being touched. Others lean subtly toward him, drawn by the promise of care even as they distrust it. He checks pulses, observes breathing, offers water. He does not lecture. He does not scold. When he moves on, he leaves behind more questions than answers. Whispers grow a fraction louder now, still cautious, still restrained, but undeniably present. Questions circulate in fragments. Why are they doing this? Is it because the war is ending? Is it because they want something later? Interrogations, perhaps. Cooperation. Gratitude. The women search their memories of propaganda lessons, of warnings about American cruelty, about poisoned food and staged kindness. None of it aligns with what is happening in front of them, and that dissonance gnaws at them more painfully than hunger ever did. For years, certainty, even terrifying certainty, has been a form of safety. Orders were brutal but clear. The enemy was monstrous but defined. Now the lines blur. The Americans do not look like monsters. They look tired, bored, even young. Some cannot be much older than the sons and brothers left behind in ruined cities. This realization brings a surge of anger for some women, hot and unexpected. Anger at being lied to. Anger at feeling manipulated by a simple meal. Anger at the confusion tearing through beliefs that once anchored them, however falsely. Outside the mess hall, the world continues to turn. Vehicles pass. Distant voices carry. Somewhere paperwork is being filed, surrender terms processed, units reassigned. Inside, however, history slows, narrows, condenses into this single room. This meal becomes more than sustenance, it becomes a confrontation. Not with the enemy across the table, but with the enemy inside the mind. Years of fear carefully constructed and relentlessly reinforced. Some women glance up at the guards again, meeting their eyes this time instead of darting away. The guards look back briefly, then away. There is no triumph in their expressions, no satisfaction. That absence is unsettling in its own way. If this is victory, it is quiet, procedural, stripped of drama. The women have prepared themselves for humiliation, for revenge, for spectacle. They have not prepared themselves for neutrality. A woman near the end of the table lets out a short, breathless laugh, before clamping a hand over her mouth in horror, as if she has committed an unforgivable crime. A laugh has no place here. It feels dangerous. She scans the room waiting for reaction. None comes. Her shoulders sag slightly, and the laugh dissolves into a shaky exhale that might also be a sob. Emotion has nowhere to go but inward. As plates empty, the fear does not vanish, it transforms. It becomes something quieter, heavier. A realization begins to form, one that none of them are yet ready to articulate. If this food is real, if this kindness is real, then the world they were taught to understand is fundamentally broken, and rebuilding an understanding of reality may be harder than surviving hunger ever was. The war outside may be ending with signatures and proclamations, but here at this table another collapse is underway. Certainty is giving way to doubt, and doubt, once introduced, cannot be easily contained. When the last bites are taken, there is no announcement to mark the end of the meal. No whistle, no shouted command, no ceremonial clearing of the room. The trays are simply collected, one by one, the clatter softer now, subdued, as if even the metal understands the gravity of what has taken place. Steam still curls faintly upward from a few plates, lingering in the air like a ghost that refuses to leave. The women watch the food disappear with an intensity usually reserved for departures and funerals, eyes tracking every movement until the trays vanish beyond the doorway. Only then does the reality settle in. It is over. At least for today. They rise slowly from the benches, joints stiff, movements cautious. No one rushes, no one knows what comes next, and so they move as though sudden motion might summon consequences. Guards gesture toward the exit, their movements economical, almost bored. The women obey, filing out in uneven lines, boots scuffing against the floor. But something subtle has changed. Their shoulders are not quite as hunched. Their gazes, once fixed firmly on the ground, lift occasionally, flickering upward before retreating again. It is not confidence. It is not hope. It is the faintest crack in a wall that once seemed impenetrable. Outside, the late light of day hangs low, muted by clouds and smoke that still haunt the sky. The camp looks the same as it did before the meal. Barbed wire, wooden barracks, the watchtowers standing like silent sentinels. Yet the women move through it differently now, as if the landscape has been quietly altered. Their bodies feel heavier with food, warmer, unaccustomed to fullness. Some experience cramps, dull aches as their stomachs protest the sudden change. Others feel lightheaded, the rush of nourishment colliding with exhaustion. A few stumble, steadied immediately by hands, reaching out without thought. That reflex alone feels strange, help given automatically, without calculation. As they walk, murmurs ripple through the group. Not the sharp, fearful whispers of before, but subdued, fragmented reflections. Did you taste the butter? I forgot what bread like that felt like. Do you think it will happen again? No one answers with certainty. Certainty feels dangerous now. Better to exist in questions than risk believing in something that could be taken away. One woman lingers at the edge of the group, slowing her pace deliberately. She turns her head, glancing back toward the mess hall. From this distance, it looks unremarkable, a long, low building, indistinguishable from dozens of others scattered across the war-torn landscape. And yet, for her, it has become something else entirely. A threshold. A place where fear and expectation collided, and neither emerged intact. She stares at it for a few seconds longer than necessary before a guard clears his throat, gently but firmly urging her forward. She complies, but the image burns itself into her memory. That night, in the barracks, the effects of the meal ripple outward in unexpected ways. Some women cannot sleep, their bodies restless, unaccustomed to digesting more than scraps. Others fall into deep, almost frightening slumber, their systems overwhelmed by nourishment. Quiet conversations unfold in the dark, voices barely audible over the wind pressing against the walls. They speak of the food, yes, but also of what it might mean. Of rumors they have heard, that the war is truly ending, that Germany is broken beyond recognition, that the world they knew will never return. For some, the meal ignites anger, a bitter, corrosive anger that simmers just beneath the surface. If the enemy can feed them like this now, why was everything else allowed to happen? Why did starvation, bombings, and terror stretch on for years if abundance existed somewhere beyond reach? The questions have no satisfying answers. They circle endlessly, feeding resentment as much as reflection. For others, the anger turns inward. Shame creeps in quietly, insidiously. Shame for having believed the lies. Shame for having feared kindness. Shame for how desperately they clung to the food, how quickly they hid it away. How little it took to reduce them to trembling caution. They replay their own reactions over and over, judging themselves harshly, as if survival itself were a moral failing. And yet, beneath the anger and shame, something else stirs, something far more dangerous to the rigid structures that once governed their lives. Recognition. The Americans did not behave as the enemy was supposed to behave. The food did not conceal poison or humiliation. No price was demanded. That realization does not absolve anyone. It does not rewrite history or erase responsibility. But it punctures a myth, and myths, once punctured, tend to deflate rapidly. In the days that follow, the meal becomes a reference point, spoken of in fragments, revisited in memory again and again. When another meal arrives, simpler, smaller, but still real, the women exchange glances heavy with meaning. When medical checks are conducted without cruelty, when orders are given without shouting, the dissonance deepens. Each ordinary act of humane treatment adds weight to that first experience, reinforcing it, anchoring it in reality. Years later, survivors will struggle to explain why that meal mattered so much. They will insist it was not about gratitude or forgiveness. It was about rupture, about the moment the war stopped being an abstract machine of fear and became something painfully human. About realizing that the enemy had faces, voices, routines, and the capacity for restraint. Some will remember the taste vividly for the rest of their lives. Others will forget the flavors entirely, but recall the terror more clearly than any hunger they endured. A few will speak of that day as the moment they understood that survival was not just physical, but psychological, that living through the war had required them to harden themselves in ways that peace would demand they undo. History books will not record their names. The meal will not merit a footnote. But in the quiet space between defeat and rebuilding, between ideology and reality, it will endure as a turning point etched into memory rather than stone. Because in a war defined by brutality and certainty, the most unsettling experience was not violence, but the sudden, undeniable presence of mercy, served plainly, without explanation, on a metal tray.